Patrick Mahomes did it again. Why did we ever think it wouldn't? Why did we ever think that the best player in the NFL would not come through? I don't know why. I don't know why we did. And Brock Purdy proved me wrong. Made me look like an absolute buffoon. There's a lot to get into in this episode. I don't know where to start. I guess we'll start with the Lions and the 49ers, the NFC Championship game, where the story today and over the next couple days as we go into the Super Bowl is that Dan Campbell came up small with all of his fourth down calls and all this, and the 49ers just miraculously come from behind, outscore the Lions 27-7 in the second half of that game, come out with the win. There's a lot of different ways to approach this game. I had two takeaways, though. The two takeaways that I had from this game were not that Dan Campbell lost the game for the Lions. Yes, the calls going forward on fourth down, they didn't work, and so we point to them and say Dan Campbell came up small. I don't think that's why the Lions lost. I think the reason the Lions lost comes down to a handful of plays. They are Jahmyr Gibbs fumbling in his own end right after the Niners had scored. It is the Brandon Ayuk 51-yard catch off of a Lions corner's face mask, and it is a Josh Reynolds drop on 2 third downs that you had to have where you don't come up with the ball and you end up not converting. It's not that they didn't kick field goals. Yes, you end up losing 34-31. But that was not the story of the game for me. The story of the game was that in big moments, in these sort of games where it's really close matchup, you've got two great teams, it comes down to a handful of moments. And in those moments, it seemed to go all 49ers instead of coming up Lions. If you intercept that deep bomb Brock Purdy throws to Brandon Ayuk, you obviously turn the tables. They don't score there. But instead, Brandon Ayuk turns it into this incredible highlight catch. If Josh Reynolds catches one of those third downs, or I think the first one was a fourth down, if you're going to make a play on one of those two plays, you're probably going to score there if you're the Lions, or at least eat up more clock where the 49ers can't make a play themselves. And then that fumble in their own end, Jahmyr Gibbs, like that was the huge momentum swinger. Obviously, Purdy throws the bomb to Ayuk. Ayuk catches it. They score. You make it 24-17. Gibbs fumbles, and then it's 24-24, and all of a sudden, the momentum has just completely left the Lions, and they end up losing. Dan Campbell's going forward on fourth thing, everybody's going to talk about that today and tomorrow and the next day, and that's fine. I understand not agreeing with the calls. I get it because it didn't work out. But if they do work out in the third quarter, if instead of going forward on fourth, coming up empty, if you kick a field goal there and you go up, I think it would have been 27-10, I think it would have been. Obviously, 27-10 looks a lot different than 24-10. I get that. But at the end of the day, you just didn't make plays as a team. And I know Dan Campbell's part of that, being the coach. They were severely outcoached there in the second half. The 49ers crushed them in the second half, absolutely crushed them. So takeaway number one, it's not Dan Campbell's fault. Yes, he bears some of the blame here. But when you just don't make plays in some of these swing plays that happen in a big game like this, when it comes up all 49ers instead of coming up a couple Lions here, if you could get a couple of those, things may look very, very different. Instead, they come up all 49ers, and you end up losing. My other takeaway is that I've got to eat some crow on Brock Purdy, and I've got to do it 7 days after I said I didn't think that in a big moment he would make the big play that you had to have in order to win a big game. He made a lot of big plays. He made a lot of them. He runs for 50 yards in the second half, several third downs, you've got to have it. And Brock Purdy gets out of the pocket. Lions are playing man, and he goes and gets a first down. He's making me look bad. And I think my approach to Brock Purdy was just wrong. I don't necessarily think that my feelings are all incorrect, but I'm going to play a clip from a fantasy football podcast that I do with one of my buddies, Ben, where he pushes back last week on some of my feelings about Brock Purdy. He takes a different approach than how I approach Brock Purdy, obviously, because he's pushing back on me. But I'm just going to play this clip where Ben's pushing back a little bit, and I think it illuminates how we need to view Brock Purdy, because I think the way I was viewing Brock Purdy in general needed to shift, and after this weekend, it has.
I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you that he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I'm not gonna argue that he should be in the NFL or MVP conversation. No, I agree with you there. He's like the 6th, 7th best player on their offense. But in that offense, in that system, is he a system quarterback? Yes. But in that system, he is flawless. I mean, he's phenomenal. He plays that system better than anyone we've ever seen.
Hit the nail on the head there. With Brock Purdy is playing the position in this offense within this system better than anybody Kyle Shanahan has had. And it's an easy comparison comparing him to Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo came up small in that Super Bowl in 2020. They had a 10-point lead, I think with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter in that game, ended up losing. It's easy to say Brock Purdy is significantly better than Jimmy Garoppolo, and he is. I think where I was wrong here, because I was wrong, is that I'm comparing Brock Purdy in my head to some of the other 5 best quarterbacks in football. And he's not one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. Yes, he was in the MVP conversation. Yes, he put up amazing stats on paper this year. He led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. All those things are true. And yet, when I'm looking at Brock Purdy, I'm saying, is he going to compare to Josh Allen? Is he going to compare to Patrick Mahomes? And I'm just looking at it the wrong way. You don't need to compare Brock Purdy to the 3 or 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL for him to be a massive success. Brock Purdy is in a bubble of his own. He's not a game manager. He is a manager of the Kyle Shanahan offense. How is he in that role? Not how is he compared to Patrick Mahomes? How is he compared to Josh Allen? Because if I compare him to those guys, I am going to come up and say, you know what? Patrick Mahomes is better. You know what? Josh Allen makes more spectacular plays. Brock Purdy does not compare to those elite playmakers, but that does not mean that he's not good enough to get the 49ers where they want to go, as evidenced by the fact that they are in the Super Bowl, which is where they wanted to go. So, I got to eat crow there. I was wrong. Brock Purdy is good enough in the situation that he is in, surrounded by the players he's surrounded by, to get the 49ers where they want to go, to get them to the promised land, which is the Super Bowl. Now they got to go play against Patrick Mahomes. And I think if we approach this Super Bowl as it's Brock Purdy versus Mahomes, we're missing the point. It's not Brock Purdy versus Mahomes. It's the 49ers versus the Chiefs. It's the accumulation of the parts that make the whole. And Brock Purdy is not the tip of the spear for the 49ers. He is a part of the spear that is going to be launched at the Chiefs. And I don't think we should, and I don't think I should have judged Brock Purdy on what he is by himself. Brock Purdy needs to be judged on what he is when you add him to all the pieces that they've got there in San Francisco. When you add him to Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Trent Williams, that offensive line, Christian McCaffrey, that defense, Fred Warner, Charvarius Ward, all these dudes. There's dudes up and down the roster. Yes, Brock Purdy is not Patrick Mahomes. He's not one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football, but that does not mean he's not good enough to get the 49ers where they want to go. Having said that, let's pivot over to the AFC Championship game, where Patrick Mahomes did it again against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I do have a couple takeaways from this game as well. Takeaway number one. My playoff manifesto has 2 rules. Rule number 1, never, under any circumstances whatsoever, never ever bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Rule number 2 is referred back to rule number 1. Never ever bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. When I'm thinking about this game prior to this weekend, I was thinking, everything is coming up Ravens. Everything is coming up Ravens. They had dominated playoff teams this year. Dominated. I mean, they beat the 49ers by 30 points. They beat the Miami Dolphins by 30-plus points. They beat the Lions by 30 points. They killed everybody. The only games they lost to the Steelers. Okay? You can chuck it up as a one-off game. But they just boat raced everybody. Anybody that they played that was good, they killed. And then they come in the AFC Championship game at home, and I don't know what happened because the Ravens that we saw on Sunday were awful. And they were not the Ravens that we saw the entire season that just killed the 49ers at home, killed the Dolphins, killed the Lions, just beat everybody. It's not the same team. They did not run the ball against the Chiefs inexplicably. This is a run-focused team, a run-heavy approach. They ran all over the Texans, too. Just didn't run the ball against the Chiefs. In the second half, in a tight game, final score is 17-10. In a tight game, they just abandoned the run. Inexplicable. I have absolutely no explanation for why, in the biggest spot, Todd Monken, John Harbaugh, and the rest decided we're going to chuck the ball all over the field. That's not their game. Lamar Jackson is incredible. He made an incredible play, a couple of them, on that touchdown drive, the lone touchdown drive of the game for the Ravens. He's evading sacks, throws a dart to Zay Flowers. He made some fantastic plays. But they were out of rhythm all game long. Lamar Jackson was inefficient for the most part. He did make his spectacular plays here and there, but cumulatively it was not enough. They were out of sync, out of sorts. You can't have a game where Gus Edwards has like 5 carries if you're the Ravens and expect to win. You just can't. Lamar Jackson was not put in a situation where he could succeed on Sunday. And that being said, he also was not good himself. In the fourth quarter, the throw that ultimately gets picked off in the end zone, where Isaiah Likely, maybe you could call that defensive holding. Maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you can't throw it in triple coverage, which is what that was, and expect for that to come up roses for you. The Zay Flowers fumble in the end zone, super unfortunate because I think Zay Flowers had a great game, all things considered. You can't have that fumble in the end zone and then an interception in the end zone on your last 2 drives and expect to win. It's like the 49ers and Lions game where you've got a couple key plays and you can't have them all come up Chiefs if you're going to win that game. Truly inexplicable. I don't understand what is going on there, that you're just going to abandon the run, abandon what has been so good for you all year long. And your defense, for the most part, played pretty good. I know you're down 17-7 at halftime, but the Chiefs didn't score in the second half. You shut them down in the second half, but your offense, for whatever reason, and maybe you chalk it up to the fact that the Chiefs' defense is awesome. I'm sure that has something to do with it. But the game plan on the Ravens side of things was awful. On the Chiefs side of things, Patrick Mahomes is incredible, and he is playing in his 4th Super Bowl at age 28. He's on a Brady pace right now. I don't know if he's going to get 7 Super Bowls. In fact, I don't think he will. but he's playing the position of quarterback better than anybody has played it. I don't know if he gets the accolades. There's going to be a GOAT debate when it's all said and done for Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know if it's going to be definitively Brady, definitively Mahomes, or if it's going to be just a pick 'em. I don't know how that's going to shake out. And I know right now people are saying, yes, Brady beat Mahomes in the playoffs. He's 2-0 against him in the playoffs. I get that. I understand that. But Mahomes, to take this team and get them to the Super Bowl is incredible because they were awful, at least by Chiefs and Mahomes standards this season. Like, just think about this for a second. In Patrick Mahomes' best season, they made and won the Super Bowl. In his worst season, they're in the Super Bowl. This was Patrick Mahomes' worst season as a pro. They were averaging like 17 points a game as an offense. This was not the Chiefs of old. This was not what we were used to. Travis Kelce looked old. They didn't have a number one receiver. Their tackles were leaky. Mahomes was getting sacked left, right, and center. And then the playoffs comes, and all of a sudden your tackles are great. Travis Kelce is a vintage of old, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't make mistakes anymore. They just flipped a script in the playoffs, and they've been flawless. Now, they've benefited, certainly, from the fact that they're playing the Miami Dolphins in the snow. They're playing a leaky Buffalo Bills defense. But then you go and play the Ravens at home, and maybe you say they benefited from the fact that the Ravens just trotted out an awful game plan, I guess. But, like, this was incredible. So, referring back to the manifesto, never, ever, under any circumstances, bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I'm sticking to it from here on out until I see something different, until I'm convinced with my eyeballs that there's a reason to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to side with Mahomes in the playoffs. He's nails. He's incredible. What a playoff run by the Chiefs. What a season to turn that thing around and get them back to the Super Bowl, where now they face Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers and that whole crew. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. What a year. I'm so curious how this Super Bowl is going to play out. I'm referring back to the manifesto here. In the Super Bowl, I will be picking Mahomes and the Chiefs. I don't want to overanalyze this. I don't want to do it to myself again, because I was looking at this AFC Championship matchup, and it was the Ravens are killing everybody. Their offense is on a tear. Their defense is one of the three best defenses in football. They're crushing people, suffocating opposing offenses. And I was like, I talked myself into Ravens in that AFC Championship game. I did not have the Chiefs absolutely controlling that game from the jump on my bingo card. I'll be picking Mahomes. I'll be picking Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I don't want to talk myself into the Chiefs, even though on paper I think they've probably got a better roster. They've got stars up and down that thing, but until I see it, until I have a reason not to pick Patrick Mahomes, I'll be picking Mahomes in the playoffs.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wings.